of augmented reality specialists to discuss the emerging trends in AR and how this technology will impact the future of computing. I'd like to start off by welcoming our panelists. Joining us today, we have Abbas Saleem Khan. He's the CEO of Optera Digital, a Pakistani transmedia specialist who also produced animations and visual effects. His work ranges from designing Pakistan's first NIC card to working in Trango Interactive as an art director on games like Tomb Raider, SpongeBob, SquarePants, and he even worked on Burqa Avenger. Welcome, Abbas.
Oh, thank you very much, Novaira.
Next up, we have Misbah Orezi. She's a graduate from Yale University and a product manager currently working at Facebook. Hi, Misbah. She was working previously as a senior product manager at Microsoft, where she worked on their first VR headset, as well as the recently announced HoloLens 2. She's also an inventor on 10 plus patents in the mixed reality and productivity space. Glad you could join us today, Misbah.
Thanks, Novaira.
And finally, we have Abdul Rafay. He's the director of product engineering at VisionX. Rafay's expertise revolve around innovation-led media solutions using cutting-edge technologies like data science, machine learning, AR, and VR. In the past, he's been associated with multiple corporate firms like Telenor and MCB. Thank you for joining us today, Abdul.
Thank you, Novaira.
All right, so this is our panel today. We'd like to start off by focusing on each of your unique career journeys and understand a little bit about your background and how you ended up working in the augmented reality space. So let's start with Rafay. Can you share a little bit about your career journey and what was it about working in AR that made you switch from fintech to this field? Because that's quite a big jump.
Yeah, interesting. So thank you for having me on the panel. So I would just like to give you a brief introduction of my educational career as well. So I've done my CS in computer sciences from BZU, followed by a master's in computer sciences with major subjects in machine learning and data sciences. So I have been associated with tech industry for almost 10 years, and so I have remained part of startups as well as the enterprises like you mentioned. So my most recent engagements were with Telenor and MCB, and I was working in the capacity of data science lead. My core expertise area is basically innovation-led digital products that are focused on using AI-based technologies and combining them with AR and VR. Currently, I'm working in the capacity of Director Product Engineering at VisionX, but your question, so how did I end up in AR? So it's interesting. So I've always been passionate about new technologies throughout my career. I think it was back in 2017 when Apple first released the AR kit, and it got my attention. And right after that, I started focusing on the area and started working on a few of the products on my own. Later, 1.5 years later or so, I was approached by VisionX. At the time, I was working at MCB. So they approached me, and the ideas that they told me that they were working on regarding AI and AR, that really pushed me to move towards this area. So I made that jump and then moved to the VisionX because those areas were complementing my skill set as well. I was always passionate about AR, and along with my personal capabilities in AI. So that was the main reason that I switched over. So when I started in VisionX in the beginning, we were just getting into this AR area at the time. And we had a global team, but to be fair, in Pakistan, we didn't have that much resources available. So it was sort of a challenge to bringing up a team in Pakistan as well. So we used our SMEs from the global and trained the resources in here from complete pipeline, starting from 3D modeling to developing these AR-based products. And since then, I have been associated with this one. And I think within 6 to 8 months or so after working on this one, we were marked as 7th most innovative company in the area of AR and VR by Fast Company. So that was quite of achievement. I think, awesome. Yeah, that's the intro for myself.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Misbah, coming over to you. Can you tell us, a few words about your journey and how you went from a degree in bioengineering and computer science to working in augmented reality?
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Misbah. As Nora mentioned, I graduated from Yale, and I was looking at kind of breaking into tech and working in tech. I've always been super passionate about it, especially kind of the startup and entrepreneurial space. Started working at Microsoft, so I joined Microsoft right after graduating, and I started working on like Office 365 and very, very different from AR and VR. Very enterprise focused. Microsoft as a company generally is very enterprise focused. And so I worked on that team for a few years. I was a product manager. And so for people that aren't like fully aware of what a product manager does, is like, as a role at these tech companies, product managers work very, very closely with the engineering team, with the design team, with like all kind of cross-functional teams to really design and like be the voice of the users and customers, and go back to kind of designing what is the product that we're building, who are we building it for, and just like going into the weeds of like, okay, these are the technical challenges. This is like what is available to us right now. This is what we can actually do, etc. So that's kind of what PMs do, and always been a PM in my career at Microsoft. I love that it's super interdisciplinary. But I was on the Office team. It was cool. It was obviously highly impactful, like impacting like billions of people. But I think for the next step in my career, I was really passionate about other things outside of that, particularly kind of what was happening with AR and VR in that space. And that was kind of, it was newly kind of becoming an exciting area. A lot of people were kind of looking into what potential experiences they could build on top of the stack. And for me, it was really compelling because if with AR and VR as well, you're able to build so many experiences that touch all these different industries and all these different kind of people. For example, you're able to build an experience that helps doctors in surgeries with AR, right? And on the other side, you're able to help like NASA design their next rocket. And so that was really exciting to me. And I switched over to working on the HoloLens AR VR team at Microsoft. And that was the mixed reality team. And I was on their platform side. So we basically designed kind of the platform experiences that other developers would build their apps on top of. So everything from like, well, I like to explain it to people as just like the overall user experience and like magic behind what happens when you put on that headset and you're immersed in like the 360 either digital environment, or in the case of AR, you're immersed in being able to kind of augment your existing physical environment with digital applications and stuff. So like we can go into more detail in terms of the challenges that I was working on. But yeah, so I worked on that for a few years. We launched Microsoft's first VR kind of headset line. That was super exciting. And then most recently launched HoloLens 2, which is their augmented reality headset. It's amazing. If you have not demoed it, then I would highly encourage everyone to have the opportunity to go to a Microsoft store and try demoing it. And then recently, a couple of years ago, I switched over to working at Facebook, where I'm a product manager that leads kind of newsfeed and stories experiences. And that's a whole different kind of area. But yeah, that's kind of my intro. And I don't know if I fully answered your question, Novaira. But
No, that's good. Yes, thank you. Thanks for walking us through your journey. All right, next up, Abbas. Can you walk us through your journey? And I think this one is a little bit easier to understand, like going from games into augmented reality, but what compelled you to go into this, and what does your company do? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. So I've been working in games for games and animation essentially since about 2003, 2004. And part of that I used to make mods. And well before that, I trained as a comic artist. But when the market sort of fell, my parents forced me to come back to Pakistan and said, Abbas, you're going to become a chartered accountant. So I did about 2 years of that, dropped out screaming and running, and I found a job as a graphic designer where at a company called Expert Systems, where I could actually basically work on the design of the new ID card, the CNIC in '99. I actually designed that along with a few other things. At the time, I thought I was just not doing too much with my life. I was getting 40,000 rupees a month, which is great in 1999. So I got to a point where I wanted to start doing creative things again. So I found this job in games and become a concept artist at Triangle Interactive. And I started growing up. But while I was at Trango, I started to understand real-time rendering more because I used to spend a lot of time interacting with all the programmers. So it's always about trying to understand, hey, why does this Pixar stuff all in squares and we have all these triangles in our models? That's how basically the conversation started. And what happened was that as you look at games, the way the market evolved from console, then we went to social and mobile, they became more ad driven, heavy. And I kept on going back to one thing you learned about virtual worlds was that when you made an MMORPG or any game, you would have this model, right? Where you just paid for the game, and 3 months later, the game would run out of content. There's no way of it monetizing itself besides it's going to free to play, which basically kills the game, and it essentially collapses. So free to mobile advertising became a thing in the 2010s. When I started working excessively in mobile advertising, I started working more with ad mediation systems and tracking and understanding them. And then I saw a demo for HoloLens, the first one, and my jaw dropped. I was like, okay, this. I was actually already working with VR, and VR was great. I had a DK1, a DK2, and but when I saw the HoloLens, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. But I was like, okay, there's only one problem. It's not. It has a very limited field of view. It's got great rendering and great gesture tracking, but what the hell do I do with like 36 degrees with it, or something like that? And then I saw the Meta 2, and this guy, he had this TEDx talk, and he had what 90 degrees field of view, and he did all sorts of things. And I said to myself, if they make it this small, and they start overlaying all these AR experiences with ads and things like that, it could really change the way it's going on. So I started working on designing a framework for an AR-based ad mediation system. Meanwhile, I applied for a grant at Ignite, and they thought I was nuts when I first sent it to them. But then they basically asked me some very relevant questions. I had to start making sense out of it. Because, I basically said, here's my proposal for Blade Runner. And they were like, yeah, go away, kid. But anyway, I persevered, and basically, so I took my experience from building mobile ad mediation systems for games, and I said, what if you merge it with an AR? Because you played any AR applications and things like that. The main key problem that you always found with this was there's a big little mobile ad in the way, and it's obstructing your view. So you can't do much with applications. And so if you want to beat the experience, you go away with the ads. Your game sells well for about 3 months, and then it just crashes out of the store, which is a very common phenomenon. So what I started working with a framework for, you have a Unity plugin, which is what most AR apps are made in, and you embed it within the AR experience, and then you connect it to a cloud-based panel, and people can basically configure multiple ad systems in one time. So you can actually increase your impression rate or ROI. Right now, it's in community release right now, so we're studying in community feedback. We've got about 3,000 active developers, and I'm pretty happy with it, but I want to do more with it, of course.
Okay, that's
I'm
awesome.
sorry, have I gone off tangent?
Sure. No, that's fine. We just wanted to know about your history. That's cool.
Oh, my history is complicated.
Thank you for trying to uncomplicate it and for walking us through it.
I tried.
So in all of your conversations, like Misbah and Rafay and Abbas, we've heard the terms VR, AR, mixed reality, and often, these are used interchangeably. Sometimes the difference is clear. Sometimes it's really, especially between mixed reality and augmented reality, it's a little bit unclear what are the differences. Could you guys take a stab at maybe trying to explain for the audience how VR, AR, and MR differ from each other?
Can I do it? Can I try? Is that okay? Can I? All right. Okay. So when we start off with AR, you have to understand that anything that's overlaid on top of your real-world application and essentially improves it or enhances it, it's essentially augmented reality. And you have to really simplify the term augmented reality because people think it's going to be cloud connected and it's computers and stuff like that. No. Look at it this way. About 500-600 years ago on their muskets, they used to take these the scopes on them, and they pinged a little crosshair on it. And that's an early form of augmented reality. Now, people think that you have to do all sorts of complicated things, overlays. You go on with the, do you guys remember World War II plane called the Spitfire? Okay, so it had a very interesting way of how to use two mirrors to basically overlay the how the German plane was coming at the British plane, so they could actually fire more accurately towards it. It was just a simple overlay, and that's how augmented reality is. Anything that basically plays in front of the real world that improves your understanding of or gives you an extra advantage is augmented reality. Modern augmented reality, which probably started, I would say, in the 70s with when they started building smart heads-up displays for fighter planes, the F-16, the F-14, the F-17, and later on civilian planes like the Cessna and a few others. That's modern AR, and then it just goes into another direction of that. VR basically means that anything that takes you away from the real world and into a completely new world. That's essentially the difference. So with VR, we normally associate with headsets, we put it on our heads, and we're completely taken out of the reality that we're in. Quite often, more often than not, I am with my Oculus Quest, I'm playing at home, and I am bumping into things. Sometimes my kid comes and pushes me because he thinks it's funny because I can't see. That's virtual reality, because I work out in a virtual gym every day. And I am not in the world that I'm in. I see a virtual gym, I'm punching, I'm not kicking, I'm punching, moving, crouching, jumping sometimes, and I'm completely unaware of the world I'm in. The world outside me.
All
I'm in
right.
a world.
So we have AR and we have VR. Misbah, can you explain what is MR? Like how is that different?
Yeah, I think Abbas touched on it. MR is basically a blend of both of them, right? It's a blend of both the physical and virtual worlds that includes your real world and computer-generated objects that are on top of it. And so really, at least at Microsoft and on the HoloLens team, when we were talking about MR, a lot of the times the experiences and the platform that we were building it with knowing that it should be able to work both in a fully immersive environment like VR, as well as an augmented reality environment like the HoloLens device. And so that's why we always kind of called it MR, mixed reality, just trying to span kind of the full spectrum of the devices that we were building and the experiences that we were building on top of them.
Okay, cool. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being in VR versus being in AR? Rafay, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Yeah, I think Abbas and Misbah very well explained the three. To starting on the advantages, so I feel that both AR and MR, they are related, but about the VR, so we cannot directly compare these. But if I were to jot down some of the advantages of AR, I would say that for AR, you need a smartphone nowadays, and you can have that access to the AR application. So this would be one. So you have that market penetration with AR nowadays. You can also add on new information to your real world scenarios. So it's helping in that case as well. Computationally, I would say that VR, as compared to VR, it's not that computationally expensive. But talking about VR, if we go and simulate a complete environment, so it takes lots of effort in terms of development as well. Talking about disadvantages, I can say that it's less immersive as compared to VR, because in VR, you're completely in a new environment, in a completely similar environment, and there are endless possibilities. With AR, you're some sort of stuck with real world scenario, and then you have to play around with what you have in that particular environment. So in terms of interactions as well, we can have multiple interactions. I would say that we cannot directly compare these, but if I were to tell you a few of these would be those.
Okay, awesome. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add, or does that pretty much cover the spectrum?
Yeah, I think Abdul Rafay did a great job. I personally really like AR.
Yeah.
That's my favorite platform. I do agree the barrier to entry is just a lot lower on AR, where you can just pick up your smartphone and go at it.
All right, awesome. So moving on, let's talk about the stack, right? So there's hardware, there's platform, and then there's applications that live on that platform. Starting from the bottom, hardware devices. What is the current state of the art, and what would it take for these devices to become mainstream, right? We've all heard of the HoloLens. We've all heard of Meta glasses. There are devices that exist, but they're not as widespread as, for example, a smartphone, right? So what's missing? Why aren't people adopting these devices? And in your opinion, what needs to happen in order for, a mass adoption to take place in terms of hardware and form factor, maybe?
Who wants to take that one?
Anybody?
I guess I can start. Or Abbas, you can take it. Okay. At least we're like working on the HoloLens. The one thing that becomes really obvious to you, especially with the first device, and now it's the second device, is a couple of things that I think need to happen. So one is just the pipeline in terms of how many devices are we able to build and create for people in mass. That just working with the factories and stuff, it takes time. A long time. Hardware is always lagging behind software. And so there's definitely some bottlenecks there to be thinking about. And safety is a huge thing where it's just like, you might be able to build 100 devices, but if there's even like one thing wrong with them with safety and they don't pass, all of them go in the trash. So there's a lot of things that just need to be kind of fine-tuned and like figured out first on that side. And then the second thing is like price point. These devices cost a lot of money. And so right now, the majority of customers, for example, for HoloLens are companies. They're enterprise companies. They're the ones that can afford to pay $3,000 to $5,000 plus for each headset for every person that may be using them. The average consumer is probably not going to put down $5,000 for a headset. And so that's something to think about. The price point, I think, needs to come lower than $1,000. At least that's what I know a lot of companies are aiming for now for the next 5 years. And then comfort levels. So again, with HoloLens devices and even with VR headsets, they're a bit more comfortable than AR, but you need to think about just like the form factor, the weight, like how much of it is actually on your face. Like, can you wear this for more than 30 minutes straight? A lot of people can't. And that was a big consideration for us when we were building the second device, is just like, is it comfortable? Can you put it on for hours at a time? Is it going to last? Where is it computing? With the first device, it was all in the front of your face. So it was like super heavy just wearing it like that. For the second device, we moved it to the back. So it's a little bit more comfortable. So those are a lot of things. I think those are kind of the three top things that come to mind that we need to think about. It's just like price point, being able to build these at scale. That's mostly getting figured out faster. And then comfort levels and just like how many hours they can be used. Oh, and then the last thing obviously is just like the experiences that are being built on top of them. They need to be compelling, especially if you're not thinking about consumer use. You want someone to be wanting to put this headset on, not noticing that they're wearing something, and actually finding value out of what they're using.
Right. So as an interim, there is still augmented reality that exists on smartphones and handheld devices too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So could that be a stepping stone, or do you feel like those experiences lack? Or I know there's like fatigue if you're holding up a device for a long time.
I think they definitely are a stepping stone.
Yeah.
They definitely are a stepping stone. So there's like a million different kind of apps that you can use on your smartphone. I just don't think it's mainstream yet. For me, like one of the great examples where it felt like something is happening, for example, was in 2016 with the launch of Pokemon Go, where you saw like this movement in front of your eyes everywhere you went, especially like here in like Seattle and like the Bay Area, like people in parks would just be like walking around with their cell phones. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't think it's like, I think they're point in time useful, but not like 24/7 useful, because again, you're not going to be holding your smartphone in front of you as you walk everywhere, right? So they're different experiences, they're different apps. Still useful, definitely a stepping stone, not the same kind of thing though.
All right. So moving on to like platforms. So we have the hardware. Maybe Rafay can answer this, because I think VisionX falls under this. Like, what is the current state of the art for augmented reality platforms? what type of developer tools exist, where do they need to be in order for people to, start filling out the content that's needed in order to make compelling experiences.
Mispa mentioned, so currently in terms of the AR glasses or the other experiences, we are yet not there, and they are not available to a normal consumer. We are trying to focus on mobile platforms that are use those experiences. And talking about those, I think two on the top would be, and both of them are providing their kits for AR kit for from Apple and AR Core from Android. And I think as we speak now, there is another event going on, WWDC, where hopefully they would be announcing the AR Kit 4 as well. So
you're cutting out a little bit, Rafay. Can you move closer to the mic, maybe? Yeah. No, we can't hear you. No, sorry. Maybe removing headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear now. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I was just saying that as we are talking right now, there's an event going on from Apple, so WWDC, where they're going to announce the new AR kit as well. So in terms of maturity, I would say that AR kit and AR Core, these are the most mature mobile platforms as of now. And on top of it, there are others as well that are leveraging these in the backend. But as a VisionX story, I would say that we are using these, but on top of it, there is not everything that is being catered through these from out-of-the-box experience. So we are also leveraging our custom computer vision technologies based on detection of other attributes as well. To give you one example, so we worked on an application on AR, which enables you to detect your surroundings with attributes in your room. So for example, there is a door or a window or a socket that needs to be detected so that the complete layout can be formed. So those are the things that we are doing on top of these platforms that are already available. And besides the AR platform, I would say that there is another piece that we need to look into, because making these experiences live, there is also a part of 3D modeling. So those are also core to my understanding in taking these experiences up to the masses. So once we figure out a good pipeline where we can have a quick turnaround time for modeling as well, these things can help scale better in future.
All right. And I think, Abbas, you have some experience with some developer tools as well. Would you like to comment on the state or lack of?
Okay, it's a hardware. I started with the Google Glass. Actually, somebody tried to sell me their Google Glass, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And then they're like, oh yeah, it cost me like $1,500. You want it? Because I don't need it. I'm like, I don't have $1,500 to give you, man. I want to borrow it. And I could see that it was a very interesting experience for when it came out, but it cost a lot of money for what I was getting back in return. It was just ridiculous. And of course, all other controversy surrounded around Google Glass happened. I've used the Meta 2, I've used the Magic Leap 1, I've used the HoloLens 1. I want to use the HoloLens 2 badly. I would actually have used it. I've used it at somebody else's house. But the real problem is to create an easy, fashionable augmented reality device that doesn't trigger everyone's privacy concerns. I think one step was the Snap Spectacles 1 and 2. They tried, but they were just way too fashionable for me to use. I was like, I look really dumb in yellow glasses. It's just fun. Plus, I don't use Snapchat that much. But I loved all the tools that it offers. The real thing is that it's not about the amount of power you pack into it, but you really, even if it's wirelessly tethered to a mobile device, if you get some functionality with an AR pair of glasses that looks like you're a normal human being and doesn't take you out of, make you look like a space Martian, that's essentially the first big step forward. One that's portable, one that's around $400 for subscription lenses. You have, and this gives you some basic features like map, overlays, your messages. I would love to have a good pair of AR glasses while I'm cooking at home, because my hands are all sticky and busy, and I need to respond to messages or some things. That would be really useful. But sort of going forward, when we started working HoloAds, our own platform for tools, we use headsets as well, although it was for mobile applications. The reason why we used headsets was that augmented reality would always be confined to a phone. It won't. It will be embedded into real world displays. It will be embedded into better smart glasses. So you have to find ways of experimenting with that. So what we did was that we used the Meta 2, the HoloLens, and the Magic Leap specifically to experiment with what a holographic or an AR ad would look like 5 years from now. That would give us an understanding of how to design your product right now and leave the foundation for it. We came up with one very interesting patent out of it. It's called parallax ads. Now, all of you computer graphics people are probably going to start screaming when I tell you what we did, and the patent's been accepted. So the idea behind it is that this is an ad, and you're facing it, right? So what the ad will do is that as you move around, the ad will basically tilt to make sure that you don't leave its complete field. So within 90 degrees, it basically gives you, it sort of follows you around. So the ad will always be tilting, no matter where you move, as long as you're within the sensor's field of view. Now that right now is like, what are you talking about? But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're walking by an ad in the mall and you're trying to avoid it or ignore it, but it's sort of adjusting its orientation towards where you're at to make sure that you get the maximum ad reflection or max ad impression that you're looking at. So headsets are useful. It lets you imagine what the future world is about, lets you experiment with them. But until I get a nice pair of glasses, which doesn't make me look like a moron in public, which is synced in with my phone ecosystem, my computer ecosystem, that's basically where it's at.
So when you are looking in the future, I know all of you have dabbled in applications for augmented reality. When you're designing for a future-proof application, what are some of the considerations that you have to keep in mind for this new world, right? That's about to be upon us, maybe 5 years from now, or whatever the timeline may be. But how is designing applications for AR different than designing traditional applications that are, on our 2D screen that use a keyboard and mouse for input? Can you guys talk about your experiences in that regard? Maybe back to Misbah, or
yeah, I can start. And I think Abbas touched on this a little bit as well. But AR is inherently an environmental medium, right? Like the first step for designing anything for AR is defining where the user will be when they open your app. So it's super important to select an environment upfront. And when I use the word environment, I mean like the physical environment where the user will be inside of the app. It could be indoors, it could be outdoors. And then there's a couple of kind of crucial things that you need to consider. So one is like how much space, like physical space, will that person need to experience AR? So they should have a clear understanding of like the amount of space they'll need for their app. Help them kind of understand the ideal conditions for using that before they start the experience. So as a developer, having a point of view on that, I think is helpful. I mean, the nice thing about AR is like it's kind of an unlimited amount of space, but that also presents its challenges. It's just like how do you make sure that whatever you're building on top of the physical environment works? Or if you don't want it to be unlimited, how do you kind of do that? And then you want to kind of, so like you want to anticipate what kind of environments people could be when they open the app, right? They could be in their living room, they could be outside, and all of these environments have their own limitations. For example, if your app is like an AR table tennis game, but your users might not have like a large horizontal surface, that might be a problem. In that case, you might want to use like a virtual table generated based on kind of the device's orientation. So just like thinking through what those experiences look like and where your users are likely to be when they're using your app so that they're set up for success is critical. And then I think light estimation is something that we don't think about as much, but it's also really important. It's just like your app should be able to analyze the environment automatically, provide contextual guidance if the environment is just not good enough. So if it's too dark or too bright, then letting the user know that they need to find a better place to be able to use your app in optimal conditions. And AR Core and AR Kit already have kind of a built-in system for light estimation, so that's really good. But those are some of the things. And then I know for like HoloLens specifically, and a lot of the use cases were very enterprise focused. We built a mixed reality toolkit. And so what that does, it basically bootstraps a lot of the developers with giving them kind of sample use cases that they can build on top of, and giving them a sense of like, this is what's possible on the HoloLens. These are the kind of things that you could build on based on what's possible. A good example is like eye tracking, right? That's very cool. What do you use it for, right? Can you use it to move around objects? Can you use it to like interact with it as an input form, et cetera? And so just building out kind of demo experiences so that developers can build off of kind of these different input modalities is also really important. If that kind of answers.
Yeah. All right. It does, yes. So Abbas, do you have any additional information, or maybe Rafay, about any design considerations that you had to keep in mind when you were designing applications for this new medium?
Yeah, no, so Novaira, on this one, I think Misbah explained it pretty well. But it also varies from use case to use case. So what exactly you're trying to achieve in the AR? So we have a 3D space that we can utilize as per the need. And we need to focus into those areas as well. Likely she said that we need to look into the light estimations, and we exactly need to see where exactly the user would be using that particular app that in moment of time. So those factors are taken into account, but it varies from use case to use case. Okay. But it's different from the simple conventional 2D designing that we do.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think everything is now 3D, and that's another learning curve in itself. Learning how to program in 3D and understanding, geometry again. That's and I think you touched on it before with like 3D modeling now needs to also scale up. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the inputs. I know you mentioned gaze. There's also voice. There's gestures. There's multiple inputs that are now going into these systems. Have we seen, I don't think we've seen so many experiences that leverage multimodal inputs or all of them together. What do you think the future is there? Are you guys doing any experimentation on that front? Maybe start with Abbas.
Can I pass on this one?
Sure, absolutely. Anybody else?
I mean, I'd like to go back.
Experience with multimodal.
Yeah, we can talk about it. So we can say that there are multiple ways that we can interact with AR. Some say that they can do it with voice if they are wearing that particular headset. And the experiences that we are currently working on, so those are basically gesture based, and we try to stick to the ones that the user is already aware of. Okay. So like you pinch to zoom and swipe and these sorts of gestures, they're already customers that are already aware of these gestures. So if we use something similar in the AR experience, so the learning curve is less. So we try to focus on these one. Regarding the voice one, that we also need to look into for future. That is going to be part of it, but it seems to me that it's also depends on the situation where you're in. So you might be standing alone around the corner talking to yourself. So it might seem also. So we need to look into those pieces. But from the current experiences that we're working on, so we try to keep it to gestures, because still we are waiting for the right set of AR glasses to come out that are targeted to consumers and they are priced at the right point. So once those are out, then we can look into those areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Abdul Rafay really hit it. It depends so much on the hardware for AR, right?
Yeah.
I see some questions from people around like, what is the future of AR in terms of gaming, et cetera, and HoloLens in particular. And like, what are the types of apps that are being built right now on mobile phones versus for HoloLens? They're very different because of these kind of really key things around price point and just availability of the hardware to consumers versus enterprise. Like HoloLens today is very enterprise focused. Is it focused on gaming? No, not really. Will it be in the future as a smart eyeglass? Absolutely, right? But for all the reasons that we mentioned in the beginning that need to happen first, I think that's why it will take time. And so some people are asking, like, how do we get people onboarded? Like, how do we make customers in AR applications feel better about AR? So I think a big part of that is just like they're using it on mobile. It's going to be very use case focused, unless it's like a breakthrough app like Pokemon Go or something, right? Like that just like completely sucks you in and is very immersive. And you want to hold your phone and walk around the world holding your phone in front of you, right? But those are definitely not the mainstream kind of experiences. And so there's a lot of different elements associated with that. A lot of people that are using it on mobile are using it for a certain period of time. They're not holding their phone in front of them. And so when you're designing it for mobile, you have to take that into account versus eyeglasses, as Abdul Rafay mentioned. He's just like, they're waiting for the right thing to come out, right? And hopefully in the next 5 years, I think absolutely we'll see cheaper eyeglasses, more comfortable eyeglasses that people want to be able to put on their heads. Obviously, I think a lot of their computing is going to still be tied to mobile. So like the apps and stuff and whatnot, you'll still be designing for like Apple or Android or one of these, right, mainstream apps, because you just can't, what we learned with HoloLens, it's just like, it's just so heavy doing that all on your head. So if we want to get there faster, I think there needs to be some other, whether it's tethered or untethered device that's doing the computing for you, and then the glasses are actually the ones that are showing you the content. But yeah, going back to your question on input modalities, so I think what was really cool is just like we're always running towards making the most natural experience possible. And by natural, we're really trying to mimic how humans work today. So that's why we're trying to mimic eye tracking, because you look at things with your eyes, you kind of pinpoint them. Hand gestures. So for HoloLens 1, we had voice and we had one hand gesture, which was a tap, and you went like this, right? And then for HoloLens 2, like it's so much better because you have all of your fingers. And so it's really cool being able to interact with an object with all of your fingers and move it around and expand it and like pin it to a wall, etc. And we're only kind of improving that. And again, using your eyes in different ways than you can from the physical world, obviously. Voice is a big one. Not like the highest used, surprisingly, I guess, on HoloLens in particular. People really just want to use their hands as much as possible. But
I think there's also the social thing, right? Like you don't want to be seen talking to yourself. It's a bit awkward.
That too. That too, absolutely. But I think that's what you'll see more of. It's just like we're trying to make it a natural experience first and foremost, so that people just intuitively understand how to use it. And it's not tiring. So that was a big one. It's just like, where do you hold your hand? For HoloLens 1, people are going like this, and they can't do that forever. It was really tiring on their arms. So we had to like think about what is the optimal location for them to actually stand and use their hands.
Cool. All right, so let's bring it back to Pakistan, and because I see a lot of questions about what is the state of the industry in Pakistan right now. What companies are working on this, and what resources are available for somebody in Pakistan who would like to get started in this field. Can you guys maybe touch on that a little bit and maybe name drop a few companies that are actively working on AR apps or platforms? Abbas, would you like to?
I could start on this. Looking at the Pakistani market has some very specific demands that never go out of fashion. And I'm going to just say it. Real estate and weddings.
Weddings?
Those are literally our two biggest markets. That VisionX here is basically poised to take both. What I've always been paying for is work for basically in the real estate market, which is extracting AR-based maps for your phone through blueprints, or basically setting up furniture in some areas. I think one interesting idea that came at me, and you really shouldn't be saying this, but somebody came to me and said, okay, I've got a wedding hall and I want a phone app that I show in front of them and they can place and choose the decorations of the wedding hall. And I'm like, do you have the money for this? Because it's a great idea. And well, I'm not working on it. I'm not going to pay me any money. Uh, so Pakistan is very entrenched in its own traditions. You kind of have to, of course, augment that reality and support it. Uh,
Mhm.
Weddings, real estate are my two biggest demands that I get for. Um, Other things that people tend to really be interested in, of course, Snapchat lenses and Facebook filters,
Mhm.
big things, even Facebook frames. The demand for those are just skyrocketing. And nowadays, I think it's FaceApp, but I don't think FaceApp is an AR application. In some way,
So
it might.
which companies in Pakistan are working on these that you're aware
So,
of?
I know VisionX because people keep requesting the link to them, and I'm like, great, I should connect with them, and then I forget. I'm sorry, Abdul.
And now you're connected.
Very correct.
Because our field is very much in the middleware, and we want to just focus on community building and developers and refine our product because we've already kind of solidified the type of patterns we want going into the future. We don't interact that much, but as IGDA head, I am aware of certain companies that do it. I think Tintash has done some pretty amazing work in AR as of late. They've made a Harry Potter AR game, to my knowledge, that's supposed to be pretty cool. Um, PGA, Pixel Art, Wood has an application called Travel Ghost, which was, I think, running on Spark. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure how that application was running, and I think they're still working on it from what I've heard. But it's supposed to be like a traveling and destination app mixed with Pokemon Go for Pakistan. I think if they're able to develop and scale it, it do pretty well. But my focus is mostly on ad mediation systems and building because um, AR apps, if you watch them, they come on board for about 5 minutes. They get hot on the charts for 3 months and they just crash. And what you hear from the developers is, we have new way of making more money besides the paid route. And I was like, I'm sorry. So what we're going to do is not just for Pakistan, but globally, we're going to build basically a middleware that will allow people to grow their AR application beyond the initial $4.99 cost.
Right.
That's our view of it.
Nice. And Rafay, are you aware of other companies for people who want to get started in this field? Are there companies that are working on this actively in Pakistan where people can start applying or getting in touch with?
There are a lot of companies that are working, so I don't have those names in my mind right now, but there are a lot of companies that are working greatly in these fields.
Okay.
And I think Abbas touched it rightly. I would also like to mention few sectors as well. So AR can be utilized in education sector in Pakistan as well. So if we have our interactable content for our students, so I think they would be better able to understand what exactly they are studying. So we can utilize it there. Also on the retail side of things and online stuff. So from my experience, I have seen that we have done quite a few projects for our international clients on Fortune 500. So those items that were AR enabled, in which the people were able to bring those in their environment, their conversion rate was relatively high to those that were just with the 2D or static images. So I would say that I think now with COVID situation and the trend for online shopping is also growing, so AR can play a part in this one as well. I would say that it's a huge opportunity as of now. But companies need to focus on this in Pakistan as well. I think this is the right platform of creating that awareness among those. But there's what can be done in this area.
So somebody also asked to that front, does Pakistan have the potential to become the new hub for outsourcing for AR? So do you guys feel there's enough talent here, because we do have lower wages and the technical knowledge is expanding there? Or do you think it's confined to a few developed nations? That's one of the questions from the audience.
Obviously, we are capable of this. Yeah,
exactly.
So yes and no. If you talk about pure AR, it's pure computer graphics work. I mean, what's essentially happening, and it's been a problem with universities, which is one of the few things which IGDA as a platform to work with universities is. A lot of universities that were basically the foundation of graphics, computer graphics programming in Pakistan, they don't have a lot of good computer graphics, or they don't have computer graphics courses running anymore. FAST, which is where Novaira comes from, she came from this really good program run by a set of really good teachers. past, up to last year, I don't know about this year, didn't have a computer graphics course. And I was like, how am I going to get programmers? And that was really shocking to hear, because literally our entire industry literally came from that area, and LUMS as well. LUMS has got a good computer graphics course, so it's popular there in some places in Lahore. But computer graphics is not that emphasized. It's always about what the latest trend is. Oh, I don't find front-end programmers in Pakistan very easily. I don't find good UX programmers. It's always emphasis is on back-end. Emphasis is on existing fixed patterns. Um, and the only way, what I do is that I don't look at somebody's university CV when I bring somebody into the ecosystem. We give them a test which basically looks at their linear algebra. Okay, if you've got good linear algebra, you have a future in this field. If you don't have good linear algebra, you can go to these large enterprise companies, fit right in as a cog, and that's it. Thank you very much. You don't belong with us. And over here, everyone can beg to differ what I'm saying, because if I'm saying something wrong, please disagree. And that's how I look for people. I just look for people with good linear algebra. Syntax is something that can be taught.
Yeah. So for us, what happened was, like the owner of Drango, like he actually taught us computer graphics. Like he solved the pipeline problem by himself creating a course. Like these are the things that people should know. And then he taught us. And so a lot of, at least in my batch and some of my seniors and juniors, they ended up in gaming because he took it upon himself to go and teach us that course to fix the pipeline problem. But of course, we need more people doing the same, and we need more universities taking initiative.
I know, it's kind of sad that we don't have Abbas Ashraf or Nur Khwaja in universities. Yeah. It's just those guys pioneered stuff, and I wouldn't have a job because of them. Most of us wouldn't.
Yeah. All right. I know that Misbah has to drop off. Thank you so much for joining us today, Misbah.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Novaira, for moderating. Appreciate chatting with you, Abbas and Rafay.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so we have a couple more minutes left, and I think I'd like to look at some of the questions that people have been posted in our chat. So, all right, so Asma asked, I think we've already touched upon, like, how expensive these headsets are. Where do you think the market will be in the next 5 years? I feel like we've covered this a little bit, but you feel like there's anything else to add there? How do you see the market changing?
$400 AR or MR set tethered to your phone ecosystem, supports prescription lenses. I can get my messages, it connects to my maps. That's maybe around 3 years away, my guess. Bar there are no supply chain problems in the coming future.
Okay, that's
but
pretty
$400
good.
Is the price point.
I see. That's a lot of stuff to pack into $400, but yes, absolutely. All right, so another question is, how do you make the learning curve easy for customers? So AR is not, like I think you've mentioned it when you're trying to pitch your application to investors even. People don't get it. So what can be done to make the users feel better or help them get over the learning curve? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Because there's a question that there's a question, and she's saying that customers understand VR more than augmented reality.
Sorry, I couldn't get the last part.
Oh, so there's a question that customers, it's easier for them to understand VR as opposed to augmented reality, and there's a little bit of a learning curve to get customers into AR. So are there things that we can do to make them feel better and feel more comfortable and make it easier for them to get into
I
AR? Yeah.
Very simple. It's just what Pokemon Go was. Nobody called it AR.
Yeah.
Nobody called it anything, right? You don't call it AR. I go up and call something AR or XR or MR or VR, and people are like, okay, I'm out. You've lost them. Just say, hey, this application does this. You just put it in front of here, move your sofa around the corner, and that's it. And they're like, wow, that is so cool. That's all you have to do. You don't have to give it a technical term. Users people don't want to hear technical terms. It's like you have Nintendo. You grab it, you pick it up. This is a Nintendo DS XL. with a Pokemon Special Edition. I flip it open, we play games. We don't really get into we don't give it technical definitions. Nobody cares about it. My 5-year-old who picks up games and he plays them, he doesn't know the difference between a 2D and a 3D game. He doesn't know the difference between Minecraft and Doom. Actually, he does know the difference between Minecraft and Doom. You tell them here, it's just simply, this is what it does. Don't give any definitions. Don't give any technical terms. Don't call it this. Don't call it that. Just say, this is it. This is all it does.
I also think like tying it back to their use cases. So like you mentioned, wedding planning, furniture placement. These are things that people inherently do and they understand. And if they are doing that, if they are looking at, okay, I can place the stage here, flowers here, that's, something they do in the natural world. If we had more of those applications and more of those use cases, maybe it wouldn't feel like a foreign technology that we're being forced to use.
Yeah, it's also about keeping the use cases simple to the point. So it doesn't involve that big of a learning curve. So in our experiences, the apps that we developed, I think the uptake was really good, and we had a really good feedback from the client as well regarding the furniture placement. So we had one of those apps as well, and the numbers are showing promising. So I think so. It's all about keeping it simple.
Right.
And keeping it engaged to the experiences they're already aware of. As I mentioned previously regarding the gestures, how they're going to use those. So we are migrating those similar experiences to the AR as well.
Cool. All right. And then maybe we'd like to end on your favorite applications in AR. Could you guys, what's your favorite app?
The ruler. The one, the measure.
Ruler.
You basically measure all across. I use it like 7 times a day.
Oh, nice.
I don't think it's AR ruler or MR ruler. I just click it. Thank you, iPhone, for giving me that feature. I drag it across the room. I can measure things, and it's great.
Awesome.
Apart from that, I'd say Pokemon Go is what really made me have a lot of fun with it. I used to do it. I used to basically, when my son was about a year and a half or 2, I'd put him on my shoulders, and we'd grab Pokemon Go on my phone. My dog would be on the hand. I'd be holding the dog with the leash on the other hand, and we'd go out in the morning and find Pokemon together, and it was fun. So yeah, Pokemon Go and the ruler, but the ruler more than Pokemon Go.
Nice. What about you, Rafay?
Yeah, I think I would name the ones that we created. So on top of it would be the Life Catalog magazine. So the use case is you have a catalog and you put your phone on it, and those items come to life. And then you can place those in your environment, and you can do all sort of customizations. First one would be that. The other one, like Abbas mentioned, I think you might want to try the Mayer app as well from our side. So this is something that we did, and it had those additional capabilities like having those additional attributes tagged as well, and localization and everything done within that. So you can share that 2D and 3D plan with anyone you want regarding your measurements. And the last one, I would say that there was another one that we did. It's related to computer vision as well. It's about box finder. So you're trying to ship out something to your friends and you want to find a right box for it. So you just pull your camera towards it, you scan it, our computer vision algorithms work, and they suggest to the right box. And they also suggest it where you can find it. So you can order it on the go. Yeah, so I would say these would be the ones from our side. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. With that, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Thank you for bringing your expertise, your backgrounds, and sharing them with everybody. I'm sorry if I didn't get to through all of the questions. I feel like we did cover most of them, but feel free to post more and we'll try to answer in text if we can. But thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you, Arzish, for providing this platform for PWiC and for all of the community to connect virtually, even though we're all over the world, global.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Bye.